Welcome to another edition of Hey Bobby with Senior VP of the Guardians, Bobby DiBiasio, here on 93.5, 1590 WAKR. And we're going to talk some hitting today, my friend. And I thought, first of all, we would go back to the 90s for a guy that sometimes gets lost in the woods, but not, I know by you, of this importance, one of the formation of those teams in the 90s. And boy, his ability to hit from both sides of the plate, and that's Carlos Baerga. And Bobby, let's start right there. And when we talk about guys, I know he's near and dear to your heart.
He sure is. I love starting any conversation on the topic of Carlos Baerga with the fact that when he came to us in 1990, you remember Sandy Alomar was in that deal. The winter meetings of 1989. Hank Peters is our president and general manager and makes the blockbuster deal with the Padres, sending our best player, Joe Carter, to San Diego for Sandy Alomar Jr., Carlos Baerga, Chris James. Just a franchise turning trade. Those two guys led our team from 105 losses in 1991 to a World Series appearance and American League Championship in 1995. So Sandy, Carlos, Charlie Nagy, they never said no to me ever when we were moving out of Cleveland Stadium and into our brand new, beautiful baseball-only ballpark in downtown Cleveland. And we were promoting the heck out of the fact that we were going to have our own new home on the southern edge of downtown, a baseball-only ballpark. They never said no to me. So forever indebted to Carlos and Sandy and Charlie Nagy for their professionalism. Carlos, 14 years in the big leagues, 8 with us, and he did some things in the batter's box that connect him to history of the game of baseball. One of the best hitters, as you said, from both sides of the plate, right?
Yeah, and matter of fact, I was at the game the night when he hit the home runs from both sides of the plate in the same inning against the Yankees. I was sitting up top in the stadium that night when he did that. And sometimes, Bobby, when we talk about Carlos, his importance at that lineup was really, really big for this team because he was a switch hitter and he put the bat on the ball. And I guess talk about him as a hitter.
April 7, 1993. He hits the homers from both sides of the plate, first time ever, which always is a fun thing in the press box. John Krepop, who was our press box supervisor back then and my go-to guy for stats when you still only had record books piling up in the back of the press box and you had to dig deep into a whole lot of record books to get the information or get on the phone and call Elias Sports Bureau and see if somebody's there to help you out. And when he did that, we were just in amazement. Popper, yelled to me. He was sitting in the row behind me and he yelled to me. He goes, "That's the first time ever in the history of baseball." I was like, "Make sure you're right on that. We got to get confirmation 2-3 times over." And we did. And boy, did that news spread. Now, the trivia question I always like to ask people is both pitchers, obviously one righty, one lefty, had the same first name. Do you happen to remember, Ray, who the two pitchers were for the Yankees that night?
I do not.
Yeah.
This is a great question, though.
Yeah. Our old friend, the righty, was Steve Farr.
Okay.
He pitched for us for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the lefty, I think most people think of him as a Dodger, but Steve Howe was the lefty. And now I can't remember, but would have to check the record book, somebody out there. I think it's been done 3 times since he did it, or
Oh,
something crazy like that. While he was the first, it's happened a couple times, maybe 3 times since. You know, he was a 3-time All-Star. Ray, one of the things I love about talking about Carlos is you need to talk about Rogers Hornsby and Nap Lajoie and Joe Morgan. That Carlos, in a 4-year period, match those Hall of Fame second basemen um, with his hitting prowess over a 4-year period. I mean, there's some great names there in Hornsby and Lajoie and Joe Morgan. Is over a 4-year period. He had nearly 400 ribbies, 75 homers, hit a combined 315. And he was right up there with some of the greatest names of second baseman in our game's history.
Bob, I know you probably were not, but who knows with your history, if you were into those rooms when they made that difficult decision to trade Carlos. And sometimes baseball is a business that's difficult, and you've seen a lot of these guys come in and some of them get traded, your good friends. And Carlos was such um, a big important part of that team. I imagine it was difficult for the organization to trade him. Now, of course, they got Robbie Alomar back, but still Carlos Baerga was such a fixture. I imagine that was a difficult spot.
Yeah, 92, 93. He had back-to-back 200 plus hit seasons. He had 293, 205, and 92. And again, as I mentioned, he was a dear friend, a very closest business associate. As I said earlier, never said no, still never says no. He's one of our
Right.
great alumni ambassadors. He does our games on Spanish radio for us. He just lives and breathes and dies with this franchise that he's so proud to be a member of. Um, I liken it to Victor Martinez when Mark Chaparro traded Victor to the Tigers, and Victor cried, not wanting to leave. And it was a very difficult time in our clubhouse. I liken that to the same thing with Carlos when I was called to write that news release. And, they call you upstairs and they tell you and I just had that look on my face. And I remember Danny O'Dowd telling me that we didn't get Robbie back, Ray. We got Jeff Kent, that John Hart was so enamored by offense, powerful offense, that he felt Carlos was dipping, that his defense was dipping a little bit, that his body type was getting to a point where just naturally he was getting bigger as much as he was trying to keep his weight down and his strength up. He just, had one of those bodies that when he got older, he was stockier. And so his mobility around second base wasn't quite the same. So they sent Ted Simmons, Hall of Famer now, Ted Simmons, who was a super scout for us at the big league level, said, go find the best offensive second baseman out there. And Jeff Kent was playing for the Mets at the time. Comes over and has a disdain for some reason for the American League and didn't want to be a part of this franchise at all. And even though we were a consistent division winning postseason team, then we got rid of him real quickly. And then down the road, we were able to grab Robbie Alomar as a free agent to team up with Omar as our Keystone combo. But Carlos, again, he just lives and breathes Cleveland Guardians baseball, and we're very proud that he's still such a major player. He's all around the ballpark and the community in Cleveland all the time. He's moved from Puerto Rico to Atlanta. His wife's sister, one of those, has lived in Atlanta for a long, long time, Miriam's sister. And Miriam got the phone call that a house down the street was up for sale. And I told my neighbor that you guys are buying it. So that's how they ended up in living down the street from his sister-in-law. And now that he's a grandpa like you and me, it's It's a blessed situation.
Happens all the time. Senior VP with us of the Guardians, Bob DiBiasio with it. Part two today, Bobby. I wanted to talk about a guy who's flirting with 400, puts the barrel on the ball. Oh, by the way, he's a Gold Glove left fielder. He's got to be in the conversation about an MVP, I think. And that's Steven Kwan. And you've seen the guy from when he made the team a couple of years ago. Maybe didn't make the adjustments he needed to last year, but boy, has he this year. And you've seen a lot of guys come. I want you to talk a little bit about our third-year outfielder, Steven Kwan.
It's so much fun to watch him. I always ask people, when you watch on television, watch his batting stance. You know, Ray, he's one of those rare guys that starts with his feet pretty close together. And then he picks that right leg up to get that timing. And one thing he does remarkably well is he lets the ball travel as far into the plate. He doesn't go out to get it. There's certain pitches he'll go get and hit with authority to right field, but most of the time he's letting that ball so that he can get just that split second extra look at the pitch. So if he needs to go to left field with it, I mean, he stays within himself. He knows who he is. Stephen Vogt has talked about that, as Chris Vallejo, our hitting coach, Tito, all of them have talked about. He has a remarkable sense of who he is as a hitter and never loses that discipline. He's a Fremont, California native. He was a 5th-round draft pick out of Oregon State for our franchise. And the stat that I just am amazed at, he's got 9 games where he has 3 hits. Now he has 11 games of 3 hits or more because he has 2 4-hit games. So he's got 2 4-hit games. Then he's got 9 where he's got 3 hits. He's got more 3-hit games than no-hit games. Think about that. He's got 9 or 11 if you think 3 or more. Where he has only gone hitless 7 times this season. And he's got 15 games where he's gotten specifically 1 hit, 10 games specifically with 2 hits, and then 9 3-hits and 2 4-hit. That more 3-hit games than no-hit games. It just it's I mean, that stat is just remarkable. And I think people wondering when is he going to catch up to the number of plate appearances to qualify for the league lead in batting. As you said, batting 398 right now. I think it's going to be early July if he continues playing with some regularity here. Starting on Tuesday, June 18. We have 26 games in 27 days till the All-Star break. We have a stretch of 13, and then we get an off day, and then we get 13 more leading into the All-Star break. So if he continues to be on the field with regularity like he has been since he's returned, might be early July, and he's there's some other stat. He could go 0 for 38 and still have a higher batting average than Bobby Witt, who is currently leading the major leagues in hitting. And what Steven has done, it's beautiful. It's remarkable. He absolutely needs to get on the All-Star team. So everybody out there, go to MLB.com, CleGuardians.com, and vote for our man Steven Kwan to get to Texas and be a part of the All-Star game.
Well, you know, Bobby, it's an old cliche, right? And you and I love to talk baseball history, but he's one of those guys. I'm not going to compare him to anybody. A lot of people are talking Tony Gwynn, and maybe so, but he hits the ball where it's pitched. And you and I growing up, that's what we did. And the baseball game that we knew up until maybe a couple years ago, you didn't do that. You were trying to yank the ball out of the ballpark and just do that type of thing. But he is so disciplined at the plate. Outside, he'll slap it to the left. Inside, he'll turn and pull it. He'll drive it through the middle. It's a pleasure, actually, in today's brand of baseball to watch him come to the plate. I love it. Every one of his at-bats, I can't take my eye off it because it's the baseball that, I hate to say it, that I grew up watching. You just hit the baseball where it's thrown.
Exactly. And that's all part of staying back as far as you let that ball travel to home plate. Don't be so anxious to go get it. Let the ball travel as much as it can towards you at the plate. And therefore, if that ball has a little, for a left-handed hitter, a little tail on it to the right-handed batter's box, you can take that pitch to left field. But he's also taken to the philosophy that's been happening with Chris Vallejo this year is you see a pitch, go after it with authority and hit it out of the ballpark. That's one of the things that has put us in a position to have, the record that we have is our offense has been pretty consistent. We're scoring runs and we're not having to get 3 singles to score a run that we can put the ball out of the ballpark. But the thing I love about Kwani is also the conversation is beginning to include a guy by the name of Kenny Lofton when comparisons are hit. Dynamic leadoff hitter, Gold Glove outfielder, a guy that can steal bases, not quite Kenny's. I mean, Kenny led the league 5 years in a row with 70+ steals and such. But he does get on the base paths and can steal bases. So when you're thought of in our franchise as being somebody as quality, entertaining, dynamic as a Kenny Lofton, you're in pretty good company.
Senior VP with the Cleveland Guardians, Bob DiBiasio, this week with Hey Bobby. Bobby, as always, my friend, thanks for making time. Always appreciate the conversation and the subjects, my friend. We'll do it again coming up next week.
Well, 2 of the best hitters we know, so that was a fun one today, Ray. Always a treat. Go Guardians.